What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Optimal presented by FTN Network. We're here live on a Monday. Going to break down some review of Week 13, talk about the DFS action, and we'll take a little look at Monday Night Football as well. Week 13 was pretty brutal for me. I think it was one of the weirder weeks of the season where a lot of good plays. So it was kind of hard for Chalk to not get there with all the good plays that we had. So overall, wasn't a great week for me, but I'm going to take a look at it anyway, going to review, and then we're going to look at Monday Night Football a little bit, and then we will kind of talk about the showdown slate in a small scale. We won't do a lot of talking on that, but we're going to do mostly a review, take a look at some of the top plays, some of the misses, all that good stuff. So we're going to run the intro, and then we'll be back with that.
Every day, DFS players set out in search of the perfect lineup.
Great Scott!
To help you craft the best lineup in the land, FTN's Kyle Murray is here to take you through one of the most powerful tools in the DFS world.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
It's The Optimal with Kyle Murray.
All right. So, yeah, hopefully you guys had a good weekend. Hopefully you guys had a better Week 13 of the DFS season than I did. But, yeah, Week 14, I'm sure will be a better one. Can't really get a whole lot worse. It was pretty brutal for me, like I mentioned. But we do have a couple of exciting things in terms of this particular show. At some point this week, I'm not exactly sure the day, but we're going to be rolling out some pretty unique stuff there for the show. So keep a lookout for that. We'll be doing some cool stuff in terms of production and all that fun stuff. So it should be a good time. Should see some improvements in the show and add some new things. If you guys have any suggestions or anything that you want to see, feel free to find me on Twitter or on Discord. If you're an FTN sub, you probably can find me on Discord fairly easily. If you're not, you can find me on Twitter. You can feel free to shoot me a DM there. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. All those likes and subscribes really help us in terms of growing that channel and getting more content over there. So we really appreciate that. Let's hop into the optimizer now. We're going to take a look at the back test mode. Let me zoom in a little bit here. All right. Okay, so yeah, like I mentioned, it was a pretty weird slate that was quite frankly dominated by a lot of really good chalk. One weird thing, another weird thing that we saw was the Lions actually pulled out a win, so that was pretty strange. You see them on the screen right now. That was something crazy there. Honestly, thought that they would go 0-17. I really did not see them winning a game. They are very, very bad. So pretty interesting to see that. But in terms of the chalk, when I say a lot of the chalk hit, it was mainly at running back, right? Where you just had, if you just think about all the top end plays at running back, Sony Michel, he was pretty chalky. Antonio Gibson was fairly chalky. David Montgomery, he got some ownership, didn't really quite get as popular as I originally thought because of all the news that we had. James Conner was pretty chalky. He got there, not necessarily a big way, but he was fairly popular. Jonathan Taylor, Leonard Fournette, Elijah Mitchell, Alexander Madison, all these guys had ownership and all had pretty solid games. In terms of wide receivers, you had guys like Godwin who had 100 catches, it seemed. You had T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, all those guys, Hunter Renfrow, all those guys all got there as well. So if you're a type of player who really leans on being contrarian, I do think that it wasn't the greatest weeks for you because a lot of these, it was actually probably a fairly tough week in terms of lineup building because you probably sat down and you were trying to assess all of these guys as, how good of chalk they were. And I'm assuming they all looked like pretty decent chalk. So with that being the case, it's probably hard to get away from all of it. Now, I think that there was plenty of ways where you could use a couple of these chalky guys and then kind of round out your lineups with some more contrarian players. So there was definitely ways that you could manage that. But if you're a player who really likes to just avoid the most popular plays and hope that they bust, probably didn't work out that great for you. Now, I think that there's even like the most contrarian players still going to use guys like Sony Michel, Antonio Gibson, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, all those guys. I think they'll be used because they're just such good plays. But in terms of even like the second level of popular plays, like they just all had really good games. Like if you sort by projected ownership here, and these weren't the final ownerships, these were just the projected ownerships that I had. Moreau, he busted pretty bad, but I mean even at 2,700, it's not like he killed you there. So like let's just try to find someone that's like under like 2.5x. The first one is Jamal Williams. So Jamal Williams and I guess Brandon Ayuk were really the only big significant busts. I guess, Darnell Mooney and Joe Mixon as well, but they weren't like very popular. So like outside of Ayuk and Jamal Williams, none of this chalk really busted. So it was kind of a strange week where that just doesn't really often happen a whole lot. A lot of times you can kind of get paid off by trying to be a little bit more contrarian. It's probably tougher this week, but overall, I mean, all the chalk plays, they were good plays. I mean, running back was probably one of the stronger running back positions of the year, maybe even of the past few years. I mean, it was just a really strong spot. We had plenty of guys who were benefiting from their counterpart, or other running backs being injured. Guys like Jamal Williams and Alexander Madison, Sony Michel, Antonio Gibson. A lot of guys were getting boosts, even Miles Sanders. A lot of these running backs were, becoming much better plays, not necessarily just because of something like a matchup or something like that, but fundamentally because of their role was going to be entirely different than, it probably would have been earlier where DraftKings had them priced at. So, like, for example, if DraftKings had known that Sony Michel was going to be the starting running back against the Jags, he's probably mid sixes or at least in the 6Ks. Instead, he was 4,300, and for that reason, super chalky. So, overall, just like a week full of interesting plays in terms of guys who just had fundamentally newfound roles or better roles than they were priced for. So that was just a couple of things that I noticed. But let's head over position by position and we'll talk about some of the top plays here. In terms of quarterbacks, we had 3 guys really stand out up at the top between Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, and even Matthew Stafford's up there, I guess, as well. He wasn't as good because he's a little bit more expensive. But in terms of our plays at FTN and guys being on these top quarterbacks, it went pretty well. On the Sunday show, Derek and I do a top 5 for each position, and we both had Tom Brady number 1. We both had Gardner Minshew number 2, who wasn't necessarily the second highest scoring quarterback, but he was the best value quarterback based on point per dollar, so he was totally fine. He had Kyler Murray in his top 5. I had Herbert at 3, I believe. I had Cousins at 4 and Stafford at 5. I believe that's how my top 5 went. So, I mean, at quarterback, it went pretty well. So, no problems at quarterback. It was the wide receivers that really kind of ended up killing me. But also, the quarterback didn't really matter a whole lot because a lot of these quarterbacks did pretty solid. And I guess, like, even if you had Brady, you probably weren't, like, even differentiating yourself a ton, like, from the field where he was only 6 to 8 more points more than, like, the majority of the field. So, again, quarterback's not really going to be a major difference maker week in and week out. It's just kind of the nature of the position. But in terms of some busts here, we had Derek Carr. Yeah, he was the biggest bust. Actually, I think Derek Carr was in my top 5. So I think it was him and not Stafford in my top 5. But I did mention that I did like Stafford. But Carr was a pretty bad bust. Didn't really pan out to do anything really, which is kind of strange because it's not like he didn't have the opportunity. He threw the ball a pretty good amount, but just didn't really do anything with the volume. So he was the biggest bust of the week. Lamar Jackson was a bust. He wasn't all that great. Carson Wentz was a bust. Matt Ryan, if you played Matt Ryan. But other than that, a lot of the quarterbacks were pretty fine. In terms of top scoring running backs, Jonathan Taylor led the way, followed closely behind by David Montgomery. Sony Michel was 4,300 and was third on the slate, so you kind of needed to have him, especially considering he was like 50, 60% owned in most contests. Josh Jacobs down there at 4th. He put up 24 points, found the end zone. Leonard Fournette caught a touchdown pass, scored 22. Antonio Gibson found the end zone. He scored 22. Antonio Gibson just had a big game in general. He handled like every single running back opportunity in the backfield, which was very good to see, which is kind of, if you've been an Antonio Gibson truther like myself, you've kind of been just waiting on that for that time to come. And we got it at times last year, but haven't really seen it a whole lot this year. So you've just been waiting on that, and you finally got the opportunity, and he capitalized on it pretty well. Madison was fine. Got really close to the 100-yard bonus, and I believe his touchdown was a touchdown reception, if I'm not mistaken. But he was fine. Freeman was good once again. I mean, this guy continues to perform well. Miles Sanders was really good. He had 24 carries, which was a career high, 120 rushing yards. Kenny Gainwell actually scored a touchdown, and I believe he had like 4 or 5 catches as well. So Sanders could have even had a bigger game than he did. And Sanders, I mentioned as he was probably one of the better tournament plays of the week. I mentioned this on the Sunday morning live stream because, I mean, if you looked at it, even like not even just in my projections, but in other projections and, even in Jeff Ratcliffe's projections, like a lot of people were projecting him as like a over 3x value, which typically isn't that common. Last week, it was fairly common. There was like 5 or 6 running backs that had that kind of projection, which isn't something that we're going to like see a ton. But in terms of this particular week, we had 5 or 6, I believe, and Sanders was one, and he was projecting for less than 10% ownership. I don't think we will see that very often, where someone is projecting as that solid of a value and just not getting any ownership. Now, when you think about it, I guess it didn't really matter because in terms of guys who were either at or around 3x, Montgomery, Michelle, Antonio Gibson, Alexander Madison, Jonathan Taylor, like all these guys were around 3x, and they obviously outperformed him, but and even a couple of them were outperformed him on a point per dollar basis. So again, it's a strong tournament play. But in terms of guys like just below him in terms of outcomes, Eli Mitchell, James Conner, Saquon Barkley was down there. I mean, this is kind of where it starts to fall out, but he scored 13.5. A couple of funny names, Mike Davis. I mean, how many times have we been waiting on Mike Davis from early on in the season? He scored early on against the Buccaneers. We have Travis Homer take a 3-yard fake punt to the house. So again, running back was pretty strong at the top. Like it kind of falls off pretty quickly here, but in terms of all these names over 20 plus, pretty strong week for running backs. So in terms of the top busts, the biggest one was Jamal Williams. He only scored 9 points. I mean, if you were rostering Jamal Williams, which I did a pretty good amount, you had to have been just pulling your hair out at the fact that he wasn't out there like in reasonable spots where he should have been. Like there were plenty of scenarios, especially on the last drive of the game, where Godwin Abukwe or something, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he had like 2 or 3 catches or 2 or 3 targets, in the final drive of the game. And if you roster Jamal Williams, you're like, okay, that's perfect territory for him. Be out there in third down territory. Hope to pick up those garbage time catches or whatever. And he just wasn't getting any of that work, which just was not ideal. So Jamal Williams wasn't very efficient when he got the ball, and then didn't nearly get as much passing work as you probably would have hoped. So that didn't really pan out. So he was a pretty significant bust, probably the biggest bust of the week amongst all the positions, but definitely amongst the running backs here up at the top. As for wide receivers, Cooper Kupp was fantastic once again, but he was overshadowed by guys like Justin Jefferson, Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, and T. Higgins. Cooper Kupp was 5th. Those 4 guys outscored him there. Justin Jefferson was amazing. He was one of my favorite receiver plays of the week. I mean, he just didn't get any ownership, didn't pick up nearly enough for the matchup and for the situation. Obviously, he got a little bit of a good game script, and I know a lot of people probably didn't expect the Vikings to lose that game, let alone be in a spot where they were playing from behind. So that was obviously a great outcome there for Jefferson. But I mean, it was a great matchup. No Dalvin Cook meant that they were probably going to need him a little bit more. Adam Thielen got hurt in the early portion of the game as well, so that also probably helped Jefferson. But either way, he was in a great spot. And I mean, in football, that's the kind of variance that that can happen at any given moment. So Deontay Johnson was very good. He's kind of been similar to Jefferson, where he's been very good all season long, and he's not really picking up a ton of steam. A lot of people went to Chris Godwin instead of someone like Deontay Johnson. Godwin also had a great game. I don't believe Godwin scored. He did get the 100-yard bonus, but I think the big source of his scoring was 15 catches, I believe was the final total. I don't know. He just kept racking them up, so I lost track. But he had like 7 or 8 at half. So big game from Godwin. T. Higgins had a big game. Jamar Chase dropped a long touchdown. And then ended up he actually dropped it. He had the corner beat by like 2 or 3 steps and dropped the pass and bobbled it to a point where the corner actually picked it off. So if you rostered Jamar Chase, you had to have just been absolutely pulling your hair out at that. And my best lineup actually was a Justin Herbert stack. with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams brought back with Jamar Chase. And obviously that would have helped it a ton with Jamar Chase. That would probably got him, it would have been like probably a 60-yard touchdown or so. I don't remember the exact yardage, but that was a major bummer. If you saw that play, if you didn't see it, and you just heard it from me, sorry to beat the bearer of bad news there. But if you had T. Higgins, you were totally fine. He had a monster game. Cooper Kupp had a big game. Russell Gage had a big game. It was actually, if you played Tom Brady and you paired him up with Godwin and Mike Evans, you're probably pretty fine. But if you were like me and you had your Tom Brady stack with Godwin and Gronk all week long, and then the bring back was Russell Gage, and then the morning of you went from Gage and Gronk to Mike Evans and Kyle Pitts, you probably weren't the happiest of campers, which is what I did. So yeah, overall that kind of sums up the week for me. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big game. Shout out to Debro for that call there, actually. I mentioned I like Josh Reynolds, and he brought up Amon-Ra St. Brown being in the better matchup in terms of the wide receiver cornerback matchup. So shout out to Debro for that. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a massive game there. I think he had like 10 catches or something like that. And then obviously scored the game-winning touchdown. Keenan Allen wasn't really peppered a ton in terms of the amount of catches that he had, but he did score twice, so that helps. Renfrow, on the other hand, put up 22.2 without scoring. So he did more of the opposite of what Keenan Allen did, but Renfrow was just overall a really strong value play. In terms of the top busts of the week, Brandon Ayuk was probably the biggest bust. I mean, he got 8.5. You're definitely not happy with it, but honestly, it was looking worse for him there at the end, at the beginning. But other busts, Darnell Mooney, and in terms of guys who were projected for 10 or more projected ownership, Darnell Mooney and Brandon Ayuk were the only two to have less than 10 points. And then the only other one that was under 15 points was Devontae Parker, but he was only 3.9, so 11 points really didn't kill you there either. So again, it's a lot of ownership. Like a lot of the players who picked up ownership just had good weeks, so it was just a really high scoring week. So it kind of felt like you couldn't miss at all. And if you faded some of the chalk, you're probably walking yourself backwards a couple of steps. So on to tight ends, the top scorers there. George Kittle led the way. I mean, this is what I've been talking about all year in terms of guys like Kittle, and I mean, I guess I still think Pitts is in that category, and Kelsey. Like, these guys have the real potential to separate from a field, and apparently Dallas Goedert decided, hey, I want to be in that mix too. I mentioned this last Monday on the show that Rob Gronkowski's been the most consistent tight end in fantasy, or at least one of them. And again, he scored twice, once again, and 22 points. But George Kittle, again, I think if you rostered Kittle, you were just so far ahead of the field because just no other tight end. I mean, Goddard had a massive game. Goddard probably had his true ceiling performance and was still 11 points behind Kittle. Those are the kinds of outcomes that you are always in play with when you're rostering somebody like Kittle. And I mean, Kittle was just in a great spot. Honestly, he was probably one of the better tournament plays of the week, with everyone going cheap with Moreau, and you're paying up for a guy who has elite ceiling crushing potential in a spot where their number one playmaker was out of the game, and in a spot where the Vegas line was close, maybe leading to more pass attempts there for the 49ers. I mean, you just couldn't draw up any better for Kittle. And Two Gun listed him in his article and wrote up a lot of those things as well. So, Kittle was a fantastic play, and he absolutely went off there. Moreau was the chalk of the week. I had him at 30% projected ownership. I think he came in around there. He only scored 4 points. I mean, again, if you rostered him and you were able to pick up the slack elsewhere, he probably didn't kill you, with just Moreau's performance alone. But if you punted down there and then you, I don't know, fell short with somebody that you were paying up for, you probably were instantly done because of the fact that the chalk elsewhere was doing pretty well. All right, defense. Chargers scored 20, Colts 18. In terms of the popular defense, the Dolphins were the most popular defense of the week, and they were 3,300. They scored 9 points. So, I mean, they were fine, but again, they weren't really ceiling breaking in terms of breaking the slate. So, again, like, the defense just really not all that much of a priority for me. Let's run the optimal lineup here. We'll check this out. Let's see here. All right, we're good. So the optimal lineup was Tom Brady, Sony Michel, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deontay Johnson, Justin Jefferson, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle, Chargers defense. So, I mean, quickly right off the bat, like it's probably never a spot where I'm going to have anywhere near the optimal lineup because I'm probably never going to play tight end in the flex. So, yeah, it's just never anything I really do. So if that's going to be the thing that I don't think it was popular this week, it might have been. I don't really have the numbers on that, but yeah. All right. Let's head over to the Monday Night Football stuff. Let me make sure that it's uploaded actually. All right, the slate should be good to go. Got to do one thing, but yeah, let me know how your guys' weekend went. Hopefully, you had a solid week, better than me, like I mentioned. Some things, some swaps really didn't pan out for me, and all that stuff. But overall, definitely a week to forget. So looking forward to forgetting that week and moving on to the next one. But yeah, hopefully you guys all had a better week, and I'm looking forward to week 14, and I'm looking forward to the showdowns. Like we really haven't had that many great showdown games as of late, so especially Monday nights. So I feel like I'm pretty excited for this one. Last night was fun. We got to see the Javonte Williams coming out party, so that was fun. Obviously, he had a massive game. All right, projections are in for the Monday night slate. Let's take a quick look here, and then we'll get out of here. You guys can all enjoy your Mondays. And yeah, like I mentioned, keep in touch and stay tuned to some changes that the show is going to be having fairly shortly here. Looking forward to that, but we're going to be doing some upgrades, so looking forward to introducing some of that stuff. And we're going to be bringing on some guests, all that good stuff. So if there's anyone that you want to see on the show, anyone that you want to hear from, whether it be FTN or others, let me know. I'll try to get them on the show, and we will try planning that. But all right, top plays of the Monday Night Football slate. In terms of projection, we have Josh Allen up at the top, Stephon Diggs second, Mac Jones, Jacoby Myers, Devin Singletary, kind of rounding out the bunch there. It's like I mentioned, it's probably going to be one of the more competitive games of the week. Not of the week, sorry, of the season in terms of a prime time game. We really haven't had that many like really, really fun like elite matchup primetime games. Both these teams are at the top of the or the AFC East, I believe. I believe they both have 8 wins. I believe they both have 8 wins. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on it. But yeah, both have 8 wins, I'm pretty sure. And obviously, both teams have a good chance at winning the division rival. The other 2 teams in the division are kind of just there for fun between the Dolphins and the Jets. So this should be a good one here. In terms of how I'm trying to approach it, I think that there's a couple of interesting spots. Obviously, we have this newfound running back dynamic here with the Bills, with Zach Moss. Is he going to play tonight? Couldn't tell you. I haven't really seen an official report on that. But if he's out once again for a healthy scratch, you got to assume that they're going to be willing to involve Matt Breida. He played 32% of snaps last week, got 28% of the carries, 8% of the targets. But someone like Devin Singletary, who's actually cheaper than Matt Breida because Matt Breida scored the receiving touchdown last week. So Matt Breida is going to be a little bit more expensive just because that's how DraftKings rolls. But Matt Breida playing less than half of Singletary snaps because Singletary's at 68% last week compared to Breida's 32. Singletary carried the ball 47% of the time compared to Matt Breida's 28. And Devin Singletary only had 3% of targets, which wasn't ideal, but 7% for Breida. So that's kind of how the running back situation is shaking out. See if I can find anything on Zach Moss here. Yeah, I haven't seen anything on him in regards of tonight, but typically it's not good news when you are a healthy scratch and then you don't hear anything. So it's probably not a good sign for Zach Moss. So that's always something that we're gonna find that out obviously as we approach lock. I believe it's an hour and a half before, so probably around 7 is when we'll have that news officially. But I don't have him projecting to be active tonight. So not counting on him being available, but counting on him being a healthy scratch once again. So in terms of the running back dynamics, Singletary is probably going to be one of the better values. So it'll be interesting to see where Alex has him in terms of projected ownership. But in terms of the value, N'Keal Harry, Gabriel Davis, Tommy Sweeney, Gilliam and Johnson, those are fullbacks. Like they're just going to project as values because of the fact that they're $200. But they're probably not someone that you're actively trying to roster. Like as you can see, I have them for even Tommy Sweeney. I have them for under a point, but since they're $200, they're going to project as a value. But really, somebody down here at 200 should be looking more like N'Keal Harry, or sometimes we'll even see a guy with like a 12x fantasy point per dollar projection. So keep that in mind as well. Like the scale of that point per dollar is really going to change based on the showdown prices, because some players can be 11,000 and some can be 200. So keep that in mind as well. But another interesting dynamic is the New England backfield, with obviously Ramondre Stevenson seemingly adding on to what he's been capable of doing and what they've been like allowing him to do. So that's another interesting dynamic as well. In terms of last week, they both kind of split. Actually, those two and Brandon Bolden kind of split three ways: 33% of snaps for Stevenson, 37 for Harris, and 32 for Bolden. Stevenson got 38% of the carries. Harris got 45. Brandon Bolden only saw 8%. Actually, Brandon Bolden saw 0% of the carries, but he did see 12% of the targets. That was Mac Jones that saw 8% of the carries. Only had 2 carries. But anyway, so it looks like Stevenson and Harris are splitting the carries there, and Brandon Bolden's getting some work in the passing game. He had 4 targets last week, and he's had 9 over the last 3 weeks. So 2 pretty interesting running back dynamics from this game here. What's Brandon Bolden's priced at 3,200? So at least he's cheap there. Singletary, definitely the guy I would prefer from Buffalo in terms of a running back there. But overall, I do think that the Buffalo passing attack is probably going to be the most, the most interesting or most appealing spot to target here. Probably the same goes for New England as well. I think for New England, in terms of hoping that one of these guys just kind of falls into the end zone, that's kind of what you're hoping for out of these running backs. But I mean, Damian Harris is almost 10K. So at that rate, you're basically getting a Ramondre Stevenson, the guy who you can almost project for a pretty similar outcome at half the price. You're just hoping that Stevenson is the one that finds the end zone or has the really efficient running game. So I would prefer Stevenson over Harris, and then I would prefer Singletary over Matt Breida. So that's kind of how the running backs are shaking out. But again, I think wide receivers are going to be in the passing attack for the Buffalo side, where people are going to mostly be looking, but that could lead to some leverage there. But that is going to do it for the show. Hopefully you all had a good Monday. If you're having a good Monday. In terms of some NBA stuff, we're going to have an NBA show that's going to be live and free at, I believe it starts at 5 Eastern time on YouTube and on Twitter. So check us out there. I will be on that show at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And again, we'll have shows for the the Monday night showdown slate as well. I believe that's going to start at 7. So check those out. We will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, have a good one.